Yeah, we're standing in the Ponderosa Valley, or we're at Ponderosa, and Ponderosa is in the village of Stolzenhagen, about an hour from Berlin, and this is the caravan, the first structure that was ever livable at Ponderosa. It's a good starting point, and I guess the word community, yes, has probably a lot of different meanings for a lot of different people. And for some reason, not that I chose it directly, but I've been really living in community since I moved to San Francisco in 1989. And I fell into it through the dance community. So whatever I was looking for dance. I was looking for dance jobs. So in that, you meet all these other dancers. The world is small of dance. But I had a huge influence for me in San Francisco because I got involved. At that time, it was the AIDS crisis. It was a lot of activist movements around safe sex. I had a partnership with Jess Curtis, who had a partnership with Keith Hennessy. To say this, all these relationships are still very intact for me. They're not just like a past thing. At some point also, I got very claustrophobic by living in community. I mean, I was creating jams. The space was a very sex-positive space. It was dealing with all the stuff that's happening really actually now in Berlin I would say it's almost like a new trend or another trend of gender-specific, transgender, all of the edgy things around race. And again, because of the safe sex AIDS crisis, it was really potent stuff. And it for me, I came in from a very contact improvisation as another community and created a jam there in this space that simultaneously had these very radical practices and things going on. And they blended together. Anyway, I ended up in Berlin, to say the least, and I ended up at K77, Daniel 77. Yeah, it was 1996. I was a little late even, but the amount of resources that were there for young people to create underground everything, bars, every kind of space, I thought, oh God, okay, now I've got something, to play with, because it was so raw compared to what I left in San Francisco, but a different kind of raw. The rawness in San Francisco was body and sex and this kind of radical activism. And then suddenly I landed into another place that was space. So all of these empty spaces and renewed, leftover ruins. So from that, I lived there for 10 years in K77. I sat for 2 years and didn't understand what was going on. And but my partner Uli was really clear to go, oh yeah, we make a studio. So all of a sudden we're making a studio. I was always just saying yes. That's my main thing, I think. I'm still saying yes. But that community for me was like a consensus. One kitchen, 25 people, no rules. You make dinner once a week. You come to a meeting, if you do. There was so much room there. And there was so much space to go, yeah, you want to do something, well, you do it, And the work culture of the Germans that I met was very addictive for me, so that seemed to fix my claustrophobia from San Francisco. Some people use community as, oh, we all dance together, so we're a dance community, but I was really living in a communal, sharing resources, everyone pays the same, making decisions together. There was, we owned by joining the community. So I share an economic and a resource of space, land, property, and rules in my community. The word scene, dance scene, is something that flies in and out, and we share trends, we share choreographic values, we share our body experiences that we can't name, but we filter through each other's work. Those are the two ways. One is much more practical for me and lived in a way of dealing with capitalism, ownership, prosperity. The other one for me is a much more social, fleeting, grabbing at tastes of interests and exploration. And for me, they do pass on top of each other because I'm in both really quite deep, and not only through one word community, but by nonprofit, by a collective, by a cooperative, by ownership, by a business, and by a deep level of like friendship, history, and being a mentor for young people, a teacher. So it's like very woven for me. It's there's not much of a bridge. Yeah, I mean, I think when I think of the form of contact improvisation, there's two aspects for me. There is a technique, and there's a teaching, and there's a practice. But the other part of contact improvisation is the jam scene, like a jazz, the jam that jazz players, jazz musicians do. This aspect of like the social meeting of a space where people just come together to play and dance, it has a certain kind of totally non-conceptual on one level, which can again be turned into a concept if you wanted to make it your concept. But I think that social space of jamming, this jam culture, for me is more contrasting. Anything that in the Berlin scene at that time was also for me. I came as a really virtuosic technician, as a dancer, and I also had this contact base, which for me was about pushing borders and working out other things on a social level. And all of a sudden, there wasn't much room, I felt, for me as a still a really thriving time in my body to be using this physicality. It was like in the wrong scene, wrong trend. So contact improvisation, mixes a crossover situation for people who might not fit in at the time period. I think it's very valuable because it's touch-based. It's based on touch, and I think the world is, it's really tragic what's going on in the world around our bodies and for life, what's happening right now. It's like a really violent society going on, and I don't know, that deeper meeting of how to work with touch and meeting another human being, and I don't know, it's still so potent. And because it hasn't been copyrighted and named as one particular thing, that anarchistic side of it works for me also, that there are no clear answers for it, and you have to figure it out by doing it. This figuring out by doing and experiencing for me is super, super valuable compared to naming things, language. I'm still on this innate body knowledge. It's just a perfect kind of container to work out any issue, I would say. And it's striking to me still how powerful it is, and how many people still have huge issues with rolling on the floor with another person. Maybe it's artistic content, that it's enmeshed in other things that aren't aesthetic enough, or all of those things, that how it has such wobbly and how messy it is, really messy form. I solved a lot of problems unknowingly. I chose certain paths in my practice and as becoming a dancer. One was I really did dedicate myself to contact improvisation. I ended up in Germany. That was one of the main things I taught. I was a teacher that people liked to work with because of my kind of background to San Francisco and that way of working. I think that also contrasted what was going on in the Berlin. So there was this Berlin-San Francisco thing. I chose to be poor when I decided to be a dancer. I clearly said, I'm going to be poor. I'm going to be a dancer. And I ended up being, the total opposite than that by chance, by complete, or luck, I don't know. But I think when I got to Berlin, I was really lucky. A lot of people offered me jobs. And I don't know, I established contact improvisation at K77 Studios. I made a jam, I taught, I traveled around. And the base of those people came to Ponderosa when I first found this place, when we found this place. But it wasn't intentional to create this place like that. It was, let's build up the spaces, and then contact improvisation again as a social network, as a group of people who are not artists or not dance makers per se, but also do contact in this jam scene. That's very different. These people were available because they had normal jobs and they had another source of income. So they had time to hang out, and maybe we did a little jamming, but they weren't only focused on making their work. I mean, that's another drive. and it's another economy that you have to deal with. And so maybe again, I tapped into something just on an energetic level. So those people had time and energy, and it created a place here in the end that's super rich. You know, there's like 4 studios and a guest house, and most of that was really done with an exchange with the dancers and people who wanted to just see what was happening. And it was also because we just say yes, and we ended up creating something kind of from nothing. So I don't know, everything was open and the edges were blurry. And I always say thank you to the contact improvisation scene for almost like getting that thing rolling. But now it's very different. I mean, if I see any work on stage and there's partnering, they could have contact background, maybe not, because you can conceptualize anything around touch. You can see someone who's trained longer in contact. They have a different body. It's a different technique. And right now, watching what we're offering here, the jams are weird. They're not really normal jams. They're not just contact people. The whole crossover thing of people exploring maybe kind of a social art play form, installation. What is that? What's my body to an object? And they're rolling around doing contact, and they don't actually know the technique, or, you know. I stopped making compromises when I created this place on that level. I mean, I chose to stop traveling. I chose to stop teaching 1-week workshops. I chose to stop, trying to tour or make work, because I created something else. I do everything here, and I don't wait for a producer. I have something else. I have like an opportunity to invite people here, and if they come, we figure it out. And that is almost like a big jam space, on the larger level. We get very little funding, but somehow the real relationships and the history of the people here, people trusted it. But I haven't dealt with that around. I'm making work on a really liminal, small way. I'm making it work for people that I have a couple of weeks with, where we've already had an experience. I don't need an audience from outside. I don't want one anymore. I mean, it's fine to be invited sometimes, but I'm not working on that. I'm still a choreographer, I'm still a dance maker, I'm still a teacher, but I just decided to have a very isolated and insulated space to do that in.
What we can call heterotopia, or no?
Yeah, heterotopia, like inside the womb-topia.
No, uterotopia.
Uterotopia? I like uterotopia, yes, uterotopia works for me. Utopia is everyone's projection about this place, that it's this perfect little paradise, but I have a village of very conservative people. It's mostly international. Very few Germans, because they're busy in Berlin trying to make work. And I have a intro utopia. I hope I'm a good example. I really do. I mean, a lot of people leave very excited to, I want to make my own space. There's a woman who makes a space in Morocco called Maher. There are 2 young women who are now in Brazil making a space, and they come back and they say, I got so inspired, and now we really want to. I completely encourage people to do that. It is like taking the whole institution in your hand and just seeing. And usually, though, the compromise is going to places that are not San Francisco and Berlin. You have to go where this is why this area before was a dead area, a shrinking region. I had no idea. We were just lucky. And now it's not a shrinking region. Now it's growing with Berlin. But you need to go somewhere where there is nothing if you want something that doesn't cost anything.
And to risk.
You have to take a risk, yeah. You have to figure out another way to. I think that's also a little risky, what we're doing here, in relationship to trying to ethically make a good choice. I mean, our assumption, I'm American, I'm not German, my partner's German, but to look in this shrinking region area and go, they need art and culture, and we need education, and maybe to now do something for the refugees, and we have the national park, and we can weave it all. Maybe the people in the village, even though there's only a couple there, are really not interested, and I think we're quick to assume that art is such an important part of people's lives, but I know from being here for a long time, it takes a lot of energy and communication to make that bridge. for some people, it's just, they don't need it. They really don't. They want to wake up in the morning, they want to do their work, they want peace and quiet, and to respect people that actually are not interested in how beautiful we think art is and how political the body is. And yeah, on a global view, I know it's important. But if you're right in local, in the middle of it, it's very small things that make a difference, you know, like coffee and cake at the right hour with young people that are just in the right light. And so there's a lot of assumptions that can get made, and I don't know, we're venturing on to even another project in the next village, and it is a big question who to bring in. You know, if we look for, do we bring in new technology? Do we bring in tourism? These are really potent questions, and we may make a big mistake. But I think still just starting the questions and getting people around you and trying to be in a social, empathetic place that you can feel a little bit, be sensitive to that. That's feel where people are edging back. Yeah, it's delicate. And yeah, this area, our village, is not lost people but gained people, where most of the villages here have really lost population. And most of the feedback I get is it's pretty positive. But still, it takes a lot of work to make that balance between people. Sometimes it is 1 week that it's really different groups of people together, like really different, coming from different economic backgrounds and cultural backgrounds, and I think, whoa, this is an incredible melting pot. And then other times I think it's very homogenous, and it's just us young international dance people who all have kind of middle-class parents something and have enough money to travel around or did something, you know. And I'm being faced with that a lot. The more known Ponderosa is, you know, I may have more responsibility about looking at diversity. I think the queer scene here is really present, even though it's just, again, I've just said yes to inviting people here and proposals. I'm very rare to say no to something. But I'm in Europe also, and so not being in the States, where race is such a huge issue, and like really making sure that you cover the ground, you know, about who's operating, what are the dynamics of the power. And yeah, I'm quite guilty here. I mean, I'm inviting my friends, and I started out very small and inviting people that I had contact with in the early, 90s, and those are the same people that are here. But again, I have rarely blocked somebody saying, "Oh, this and this person should come." So, but I know it's more and more on the table, this question. I just recently thought we should start more of a curative collective, and I stepped down for doing the main programming, and it's a topic right now. Yeah, there's no one that's African American or Turkish person's not here, So, yeah, what do I want to? How much do I want to create an identity conceptually or politically? How over politically correct might it be? I mean, I don't know. And I've gone for my intuition and my gut from day one. And maybe it's still my responsibility to do it differently now if I have this much resource. If I am lucky enough to have this much space that I have to share, I better be careful. It's still watching people take responsibility. It's still watching assumptions about who's in power, who's controlling, who's saying yes or no. And this is endless for me. And because we have a situation where people don't completely just pay to be here, often they do some kind of exchange. They say, "Oh, I want to help in the garden, and then I'll do a workshop." And this is one of the juiciest things here because it creates a kind of in-between space of people creating their own performances, and it's not set up. They start to take space. And they're not in the workshops the whole time, just consuming somebody else's teaching. They start to collaborate on many levels, from site-specific to, the food we're going to eat, to a performance. But still this question of, like, the simple thing of what are we sharing? What belongs to who? Oh, this is for everyone. The we, the assumed we, people not standing behind what they really believe in and afraid to say what they want. I mean, really the basics. And I think young people are filled with anxiety, like really overwhelmed, and sad to say, and how many young women also, and probably men as well, come with some kind of a history of some kind of abuse. And for me, I still want to figure that out in the small steps, and I want to figure it out with the body, and I want to figure it out in a creative art space that's not so structured. I like the non-structure. I like this frightening space of not knowing, and I just feel like that's the most potent thing still that's here, and the thing that drives me to keep playing in this idea of the community or the we, or exchanging and teaching and mastery and virtuosity and collaboration. And that platform of not knowing has just been the best teacher still for me and this whole place. You know, not knowing what we were going to make, not knowing what's still going to come. And that's for me really potent about improvisation and dance and leading, being able to survive in the unknown space or places. It's just still valuable to me.